Hello guys, I'm Unstable Voltage and I'm here with game developer Julian Gollop. Hello Julian.
Hello.
Thanks for taking the time to speak to me. Of course, we're mainly going to be focused on your current project, Chaos Reborn, which is playing in the video. But first, let's have a little bit of background about yourself. You've been working in the game creation industry for quite some time now. You've got many credits to your name. But what was the very first game you created?
Well, the very first video game that I designed was a game called Time Lords, which was implemented on the Model B BBC microcomputer back in, I think we programmed the first version back in 1983. And it was a game about time travel. You represented a race and you were a Time Lord, and you had to travel in both time and space across 5 different planets and 15 time zones to make your race the most dominant race in the galaxy. It was a very innovative little game. It was multiplayer only at the start, and I didn't have a computer at the time, and I relied on a friend of mine who had the BBC Model B to program it for me. But yes, I was still at school, 18 years old, and it was back in 1983.
So what was it that inspired you to start creating games?
The main inspiration really came from all the board games and card games that I played throughout my childhood. My father was very keen on all kinds of games, card games and so on. I played a lot of chess. And later on, I got into playing all kinds of board games. Normally, every Christmas, we would play board games as a family together. And I remember games like Escape from Colditz, for example, Topply. There's a whole collection that we were building up, and I started to make my own board games. Actually, is really the first games that I tried to design. I remember creating a car racing board game, for example, when I was about 10 or 11 thereabouts.
Now, it would be impossible to talk to you without mentioning what is probably your most famous work, XCom Enemy Unknown, also known as XCom UFO Defense in some countries. What inspired the creation of XCom?
There were several factors that came together in the creation of XCom, and the first thing that I did was approach Microprose with a demo for a game we called Laser Squad 2, and this was an evolution of some of my early games, which were 2-player tactical war games, and Laser Squad 2 was just a simple multiplayer demo, but it did have the isometric graphic style that became part of the XCOM tactical system. But Microprose wanted a bigger game, and it's actually them that suggested the theme of UFOs and setting it in a bigger environment on the Earth in the near future. And what I did then was go back and do some research, and I bought some books on UFOs. I remember one book in particular called Alien Liaison by Timothy Good, which detailed all the cases of alien abductions, the alien greys, and also this guy called Bob Lazar, who apparently worked at Area 51, working on captured UFOs, trying to reverse engineer them. And this was the bit that sort of clicked with me, this idea that the aliens are incredibly powerful, but they have occasionally they slip up and make mistakes, and XCOM as an organization could capture their technology, reverse engineer it, and then manufacture their own technology based on the alien technology. So that was a core influence there from that particular book. And of course, Civilization itself was a big influence. I mean, everybody at Microprose UK wanted a game that would in some way match Civilization for its grand strategy ambitions. I mean, the way they put it to me was, we want a big game. And I just leapt at the opportunity. I thought it was a fantastic thing. I relished the idea of doing something as on a bigger scale and with the strategic depth of something like Civilization.
Obviously, it certainly paid off, because almost 20 years later, and people are still playing it and enjoying it every bit as much as they did when it was first released.
Yes, that's really surprising and really pleasing, actually, because it shows that some core game mechanics and core game systems can actually endure the test of time.
Now, with all the experience that you've gained since the release of XCOM, especially in terms of the game mechanics and advances in technology, what would you do differently today if you were making XCOM from scratch?
I think the The main thing I would do differently was, personally speaking, would do less coding and more designing. Because, I mean, programming at the time was a huge effort for us. There was just myself and my brother Nick who were doing the programming, and I was doing all the design as well. I think I would probably change my work processes so that I could really focus on the design, and also the idea of testing your game on other people and observing how they play it to get really good feedback, how to improve the user experience. So, for example, the interface of the original XCom was not exactly the best in the world. It could have been improved quite a bit. And I'm sure I would have picked up on people's frustrations playing the game had I taken a more sort of user-oriented approach, for example. So, those are actually probably the main things. I mean, I know apart from that, I think the overall design of the original XCOM game was really quite solid. And honestly, I wouldn't change the basic design really very much at all.
What else have you worked on recently that people might be familiar with?
Well, actually, the last project I worked on at Ubisoft was Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation for the PS Vita, which did have quite a wide distribution because it was bundled with a Vita. I worked on it for a year, working on the character and the setting and the game design elements before I left Ubisoft. And before that, my other big project was a game called Ghost Recon Shadow Wars, which was a turn-based tactical game for the Nintendo 3DS. It was a launch title for 3DS. And it was a great project to work on, and I loved designing the turn-based system for that, and I think it worked really well. Not a lot of people probably played it because the launch of the 3DS itself was a little bit of a disaster, but the game itself was good, and it was the second highest rated launch title on the 3DS at the time.
So, as we move on to Chaos Reborn, you've just mentioned that you've worked with some large development studios and publishers in your career, but now you've taken a step back towards indie development. Why the change, and how does that affect the way you can create a game?
The main thing I wanted to do was get back to making the games that I really like to make and enjoy playing, which is the turn-based strategy games. Ghost Recon Shadow Wars, was a great project at Ubisoft, but it looked like I wouldn't have the opportunity to make such a project again while I was at Ubisoft. And I kind of realized the only way to do it was to just go back to indie and do it myself. And I think the other thing is that working with a big publisher is a bit more of a bureaucratic process. There are a lot of stakeholders that you have to keep happy, and I was a bit frustrated about the slow pace of development, and I was feeling creatively frustrated, I guess. But now, of course, the situation is different. So I've been able to get back to coding and design, and I've been able to really focus more on prototyping and testing and building the game without too much interference from anyone else. And this for me is what I really enjoy.
So you've decided to revisit Chaos, which is considered to be one of your classic games. Can you tell us a little bit about the original and the idea behind it?
The original Chaos was actually based on a board game I made back in 1982, and this board game was inspired by another board game by Games Workshop called Warlock, which I saw kids playing at school, but I was never allowed to join in their games. And so I just thought, well, what the heck, I can design my own wizard game, and it's going to be better than Warlock, and it's going to have creatures moving around and have a proper board. So this board game had all the spells on cards, and you summoned them, you placed them on a big grid drawn out on a big piece of paper. And it was great fun, and it was a big hit with my friends and my family. And I decided to convert that to a computer game. And the basic idea behind the game is that you are a wizard, and you have a small but random selection of spells, and using those spells you have to kill the other enemy wizards. A big part of the spells are creature summoning spells. So you have anything from dragons to vampires to goblins, and they have different abilities and strengths and weaknesses. And there are other spells which are more like direct attacks, like magic bolts and magical attacks. But then there are some rather unusual spells, like the gooey blob, which you can summon, and then it spreads randomly across the arena, engulfing enemy creatures and potentially killing them. You've got magic fire, you've got magic wood and shadow wood, which summon these like small forests of trees. So the imagination behind it was quite fun, and it was a quick playing turn-based game.
Now, for the last year, you've been building a team and working on a prototype for Chaos Reborn, and it's almost 30 years since the original. So what ultimately stopped you from making this sooner, or what was it that made you decide now was the right time to start?
Well, after I made the original Chaos, it's kind of didn't really sell very well. When Games Workshop published it in 1985, they just published it through their own stores, and I didn't really see much money from it. After I published Rebel Star, another game I made in 1986, I offered it to Firebird to sell on their Firebird label for $1.99, and Chaos was republished then. And it sold okay, but not as much as Rebel Star. And later I offered the game for a cover tape on Your Sinclair magazine, and not just once, but twice. And that's where it probably achieved its greatest distribution, where most people probably became aware of the game was through that cover tape. But it was not until some years later that I started to hear about people trying to do remakes and clones, and then I got direct requests from people saying, well, that game you made, can I do a remake of it? And I would say, yes, go ahead, not a problem, no objection to that. But I was getting quite a few of those requests each year in the late 90s, even up to the early 2000s. I was thinking, well, there's something unusually enduring about this game that people remember fondly, and they want to recreate, and they want to play it again, and they want to improve it maybe in some ways. And that stuck with me. And before I even joined Ubisoft a few years ago, I did actually start work on a sequel as well. Then it was back in 2005, but I abandoned it because I joined Ubisoft. And after I left Ubisoft, I think it was the first thing I came back to as a potential idea for making a new game, because I really wanted to see, well, if there is something enduring and special about this game, maybe I should do something about it and try and bring it to a wider audience, but making it more up to date in terms of presentation and gameplay modes and so on.
Now, I know that you'll want to remain faithful to the fans of the original, but also times and technology have changed. So what aspects of the original can fans hope to see in Chaos Reborn?
The core mechanics of the original are more or less intact in Chaos Reborn. So you have the idea of summoning creatures and casting them as illusions or real, so they can either be disbelieved or not. You have the percentage chance for casting the creature, for actually casting the spells. You've got the balance between law and chaos. You've got the really quite simple turn-based nature of the game, where creatures just move and attack. It's one-shot kills, either you kill or don't kill when you attack. So the core system is still there. And the simplicity of it is still there, and that's what I wanted to keep intact. There will be what I call a classic Chaos mode in Chaos Reborn, which has the purely random selection of spells and a relatively blank arena, and equals sort of starting stats for your wizards. So, and again, there will be the options to set AI players or human players. In the original, we had up to 8 players, and I think in Chaos Reborn we'll be up to 6, but you can have any combination of human or AI players in a battle. So all that will be in Chaos Reborn.
Now, aside from the visual aspect, which obviously has improved quite a lot since 1985 in the Spectrum, what are the most significant changes that have been made in Chaos Reborn, and how do you anticipate that they're going to be received by the people who played the original?
The biggest change probably is in the presentation of the arenas and the battles themselves, because we've now got an element of terrain involved. So the original game had a completely black screen and it had flat 2D graphics. So the new game has procedurally generated terrain. So you have different terrain of different levels. You have different elements in terrain like trees and rocks and ruins, different environment types, mountains and forests and citadels and caves and so on. So this is a much expanded aspect of the original, and it'll provide additional variety for the gameplay. But the other really significant changes are the addition of a really big single-player mode, which is an RPG system where your wizard starts as a lowly apprentice with a very small selection of spells, and then you have to explore the realms of chaos and build up your spell knowledge and spell power as you fight wizard lords and defeat wizard kings and so on. And on the multiplayer side, there will be, of course, online multiplayer through the internet with a player matching system, a ranking system, and various multiplayer modes, which really expands on the whole multiplayer feeling and aspect of the game.
So can you elaborate a little bit about the RPG system? Will there be loot? How will character progression fit into it?
The main thing about the RPG system is that it makes use of a lot of procedurally generated content and also some user-generated content. So to explain how it works in a bit more detail, each day you'll have a list of realms that you can explore. And you can choose to enter this realm and explore it, and your objective in each realm is ultimately to defeat the Wizard King there. But in addition, you'll be trying to improve your wizard, level him up, and acquire new items and artifacts, which you can equip your wizard with in future, and also acquire new spells, which is very important to building your spell library. So as you explore, you can win artifacts and gold and equipment from many wizards. You can also visit towns where you can buy stuff, and you can buy stuff to help you explore the realm, like mountain passes or sea passages, or you can buy teleports and wizard towers so that you can more efficiently travel the land, because as you're traveling and moving around, the Wizard King is building up his power, so you need to be quick and efficient. And the character progression system is heavily based around the equipment and spells. So when you find a piece of equipment, it will either be like a staff or a hat or headgear, some kind of body gear, which might be a robe or body armor. These items of equipment actually define your wizard's basic abilities and his special abilities. So each staff has a special power, for example. Your wizard cloak or body gear will determine your basic stats of attack and defense and so on. And your headgear will determine your amount of spells you can take into battle. And this equipment can be individually leveled up as well, and your wizard level represents your mastery of this equipment, your mastery of the magical power, if you like. So you have to equip your wizard with equipment which is equal or lower level than your wizard level. And the spells, you can find spell books, you can buy some in the towns, you can win some from battles, you can find some in obscure areas of the map, and you can add them to your spell library and use them in future battles. So the story is based really on the player's experience. Now, if you play in a realm which has been created by a player who is a Wizard King, then that player can add his own story elements to the game, but it might consist more of some simple puzzles and some basic interactions with the king and the wizard lords, and some writings and scrolls and so on and so forth. And really, the experience is all about the game system and how the player explores and relates to it.
So you've added quite a lot over the original Chaos, but is there anything you'd like to do with Chaos Reborn but just don't have the time or resources to pursue?
The main thing I want to do is get the game available for players on whatever platform they want, and I think this is the thing which can take a lot of resources. So I'm a great fan of being able to play say, start a game on a PC, but maybe finish it on your smartphone, or maybe play it on a console and finish it on your tablet or whatever. I just like the idea of that flexibility that the different platforms today offer people, and to make use of them in terms of the graphical power where necessary, where they've got it. And it's a lot of work, but this is my main objective, to have a genuinely cross-platform game which people can play anywhere and anytime at their own convenience and with their own choice of hardware, if you like.
Now, at the time of recording, the game is only in prototype, but from my own experiences with it, it's got very solid mechanics and it's fun to play. But you're currently trying to get funding for the project via Kickstarter, so what can people do to get involved and help support Chaos Reborn?
Well, if you visit the project page, you'll see that there's a lot of information about the game, and there's a different reward tiers which are about how players interact in the game at different social ranks, which is very interesting. So if you back the game at the basic apprentice level, you get a digital copy of the game. You will get a nice game guide and art book and music and stuff. And you will be able to participate in the testing of the game and get access to early playable versions. And this will obviously help us make a much better game for everybody. And I think that's the main thing that people can do in terms of getting involved. And if you choose some of the bigger rewards, you have even more interesting options to get involved in the game there as well.
Now, while we all hope that the Kickstarter campaign is a success, is there a backup plan in the event that you don't hit your target goal?
Well, we will continue to try and raise funds either directly through our own website, and we'll also try through Steam Early Access and see if we can bootstrap the development process. It might be a bit slower, but I think we'll definitely get there eventually.
Now, where can people go to find out more information and track the progress of the development?
The best place to go is our games website, which is www.chaos-reborn.com. You can also follow me on Twitter to get the absolute up-to-date latest news. My Twitter handle is @Julian_Gollop. And also we have a Facebook page, so you can just search for Chaos Reborn in there. That will also contain some updates. So if you like that, you'll get updates through your Facebook newsfeed.
And finally, do you have any plans to remake any of your other classics in the future, or can we expect you to surprise us with something completely original?
It's undecided yet. I certainly want to revisit the Laser Squad concept at some point, and I think I've had a lot of requests for that already. I do have some other original ideas, but let's see where the future takes us.
Well, many thanks for taking the time to join us today and answer these questions, and we all wish you the very best of luck with Chaos Reborn and your future ventures.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for watching, guys. Links to the Kickstarter campaign and the other sites Julian mentioned can be found in the description below. Please be sure to visit and check out Chaos Reborn for yourself, show your support and spread the word. Once again, I'd like to say a big thank you to Julian Gollop for his time and service to the games industry, and I'll see you next time. So until then, goodbye for now.